Very excited to welcome back Katie Ruvi, co-host of Is This For Kids, an entertaining, humor-filled podcast helping you make informed decisions for your kids' media diet, which can also be found on EWTN and where all podcasts live. She's also the host of Frontiers of Faith from the Pontifical Mission Societies in the U.S. Good morning, Katie. Welcome back.
Good morning. I'm always excited when somebody mentions the Mission Podcast because I'm a big fan of the Mission Podcast. Not that I'm not a fan of the other one, but...
Well, sure, I know. But they do a lot of good work. And I guess, real quick, explain a little about the Pontifical Missions. Like, what do they do?
Yeah, so most people are familiar with the Society for the Propagation of the Faith. That is one of the 4 Pontifical Mission Societies, along with the Society of Saints Peter and Paul, which deals with seminarians and forming them in missionary areas. The missionary childhood was really popular a long time ago. Like in the 50s and 60s, you would get a mite box at Lent and you would put your pennies in it, and it's children supporting children throughout the world. And also the Missionary Union, which if you ever hear something come out of TPMS about the Missionary Union, it is never for money. It is always for prayer. It's just asking for prayer from the faithful. So those are the 4 societies, and they are promoting the mission throughout the world.
Wow, very cool stuff. So this whole topic, I figured we would mention. I mean, typically when you're on with us, you're sharing some of the films that are currently out in theaters or about to come out. But since we're in the season of Lent, I figured it might be a good idea to share some content that could potentially enhance your Lent. But I'm curious, before we begin, Katie, what are some of your family's go-to options, whether it's, TV shows or films during Lent?
So there's not a great plethora of movies during Lent. There's a lot of Easter stuff, but not a lot of things that really embrace the ideas of Lent. So we tend to go for something, it's not necessarily Lenten, but have you ever watched A Man for All Seasons? Where
it's been a long time.
Yeah, you're watching St. Thomas More kind of go up against King Henry VIII and sort of have to speak truth to power. There is a lot of suffering involved. It's not specifically a Lenten movie, but it's about a saint who had to suffer for the truth of the faith. He was eventually martyred, and it's a great movie to teach your kids about having to live your faith in a, let's call it, hostile environment. Now, it's not necessarily as hostile now as it was then. Nobody's losing their head in the United States at this time, but definitely it's a good one to check out if you're looking for something to teach penance and obedience.
Do you find it challenging? Because, that is an older film, very much slower paced than today's films that we find today. Do you find it challenging for your children to kind of stay put and actually tone in? Or is it something that's so engaging that they're willing to sit through that?
That movie happens to be one of the ones, you know how the 1960s movies have a tendency toward random screaming, where the sound just sort of goes up for no good reason at all. That sort of keeps kids a little bit engaged because you're like, whoa, why is he yelling all of a sudden? But I'm also a big fan of, popcorn and sitting still and coloring books that go along with it, those kinds of things.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah.
So one pick that... it wasn't brought into my attention until my wife introduced it. She used to watch this during Lent, but it's the Prince of Egypt. It was the animated DreamWorks film back in 1998, which retells the story of the Exodus story, with Moses, the plagues, parting of the Red Sea. Done so in a pretty good, stunning visual, and of course the soundtrack still kind of holds up today. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, that's a favorite for us as well. When our kids are little, we usually do that one on Good Friday, as opposed to Passion of the Christ can be a little much for a little kid. So we tend to go a little bit more toward Prince of Egypt. The soundtrack is amazing, like you were saying. And it's very true to the Exodus story, with the exception of playing up a couple of characters that don't really exist more than to have their name mentioned. But yeah.
Yeah, there is some creative liberties, just like anything that are taken. But
we're gonna learn something new about Zipporah.
That's right. Now, another one that I tend to like, well, I just actually not tend to like, but just kind of recently discovered, and I think I mentioned it either in the after show or during one of the shows, is the new streaming show House of David. So for those out there who are completely unfamiliar, it kind of went under the radar, and I don't know why, but it premiered on Amazon Prime This was back in like late February, so pretty recent. Obviously, it follows the rise of David from shepherd to king, but it's how I would describe it. It would be like the story of David in the style of Lord of the Rings. Have you seen it?
I can see that. I've watched a little bit of it. I haven't seen the entire thing through, so I mean, there's only one season out so far, but I got one episode in.
Yeah, so the story kicks off with King Saul's prideful downfall. And by the way, the casting of King Saul is like spot on. They did a wonderful job with the casting and all of this. But so the downfall, and then in David's anointing, building toward his famous battle with Goliath. So they tease it in the very first episode, but I'm assuming they're not going to have or show that until the very end. And I think producer Tim mentioned, they're up to episode 5, and there's 8 episodes. So
Prime Video's got kind of a good selection of stuff if you're looking for things that are appropriate for kids. Not necessarily a Lenten or Easter story, but have you seen Miracle Maker? It's animated, so it's definitely for little kids. And it's like half claymation, half animation. And it's just the story of Jesus. So it starts with his birth, but it's not like exceptionally Christmassy, and then goes through his entire life. So you get kind of the entirety of the gospel in a very kid-friendly way. We like that one, but it is very little kid. So like if your kid is over 8, it might be a little low for them.
It's called Miracle Maker.
Miracle Maker. Yeah, I think it was originally released with the title Jesus Christ Miracle Maker, but I think when it went out mainstream, they may have just called it Miracle Maker.
We'll remove the main character's title of this film.
Let us not put the titular character in it. Yeah.
Interesting. Are there any other, I guess, content on Amazon Prime that kind of has gone under the radar? Because I hadn't heard about that one either.
Oh, okay. So you know Ben-Hur, right? You've seen.
Yes.
Okay, the 1950 whatever. That exists. It's on Apple TV, and that's good if you've got older kids or just for adults. But they actually made an animated Ben-Hur that is completely appropriate for kids. It's the same story, but it's much shorter. So you've got Judah Ben-Hur, who is a slave in the Roman times, and he keeps encountering Christ throughout his life. And they made that. That's also on Prime Video, but you have to rent it. I think it's like $3.99. Fantastic movie for little kids if you're into Ben-Hur.
That's another one. I did not know that there was an animated version of Ben-Hur, and I'm glad it's not also 4 hours long, because that's an epic, that original.
Yeah, that's a really long movie for small children.
Yes.
Or
even adults too. Another one that I've recently discovered, and I would say it's probably more of like a St. Patrick's Day kind of film, but it's still obviously St. Patrick's Day tends to fall during Lent, would be The Quiet Man. The Quiet Man.
I don't know that one.
Yeah. So, like I said, it's more of a St. Patrick's. It was directed by John Ford, and it stars John Wayne and Maureen O'Hara. Basically, it's kind of like a romantic comedy / drama about this Irish-American boxer who returns to his ancestral village in Ireland after accidentally killing an opponent in the ring. Then he seeks peace. Then he falls for a local villager, and then tries to navigate local customs like her brother's refusal to pay for her dowry, and then culminating in a famous 8 minutes brawl. Like, it's actually pretty funny. Like, it's full 8 minutes, and then like at one point, both John Wayne and the other character that he's having this qualm with stop at a pub and have a drink, and are just like, I started to like you, and and then they go back and start brawling after that.
Sure.
It's not
like
explicitly religious. Right, exactly. Good old Irish. It's not explicitly religious, but I mean, you could probably draw some Lenten threads from the main character's journey, obviously involving some penance, kind of leaving behind his old life, reconciliation with his past and community. So there's some good things to draw from it. Also, there's some cool couple Catholic priests in it, and they're great. They're not like lame or dumb or evil. They're like some really solid Catholic priests.
You do get that a lot in modern movies with the evil Catholic priest problem.
It's so overdone. Like, it's almost a joke now.
Yeah, and the nun thing, that's always weird to me. Every Halloween, there's a lot of nun movies, and you're like, have you met nuns? This is not even vaguely related. It's fine.
No, they're quite the. I mean, you've probably experienced it. They're quite the opposite. They try to take anything and run with it, and unfortunately, people will go and watch those bad films.
Do you know what I love? A movie that I love. It's more Easter for sure than Lent. But there is a movie that's on Hulu, and I think you can access it through like Stars maybe online. It's called Risen, and it's a movie sort of where one of the guards, the Roman guards, is trying to investigate how the heck they stole that body. Like, he comes into it with the assumption that Christ's body was stolen, and so he's trying to investigate it and figure out how it happens, and then comes to the realization that, oh no, he actually rose from the dead. So it is an extremely cool movie because it comes at it from a skeptic's angle, and it's very, if you like period pieces and like ancient Roman stuff, it's very that, and it's super good. But I would caution, it's for older kids. There's a little bit of a little like Passion of the Christ style violence against Jesus, and there is a scene where you see dead bodies. It's a little gross, but.
Got it. Well, that is a very interesting angle. I think I remember hearing about that. So yeah, those are some great choices. My goodness, thank you so much, Katie, for joining us. For those out there, we will have all the links in the show notes, but make sure to check out Is This for Kids? Also, the Pontifical Mission Societies. So make sure to the Frontiers of Faith podcast. Make sure to search for those. But that is it for today's edition of Morning Joy, where truth matters. Now, if you are listening on the radio right now, and you're able to make it on over to any of the social medias, we recommend YouTube. We've got a great community of joyful pilgrims out there. Make sure to search GRN Online or Morning Joy Radio. You'll find us. We love to have you hang out in our after show clubhouse. We're about to transition on over to that, where we get to debrief from the show. And most of all, best of all, hang out with you. So stay tuned for that. Otherwise, if you are going to be parting ways for the final remainder of Morning Joy, God bless, make it a joyful day, and we'll see you bright and early tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. Central, 7 a.m. Eastern. But until then, we'll see you tomorrow.
This has been Morning Joy, where truth matters, hosted by Keith Downey. Take some joy with you today. Visit grnonline.com/joy to listen again, share a segment, or answer the question of the day. That's grnonline.com/joy.